Hello again, friends and neighbors. Today's video is kind of it's an update video on the Tolumnias that we mounted, and also this little Dendrobium canaliculatum that had buds on it. They finally opened. Little bit of backstory. We, in a previous video, I think it's been like 3 weeks ago now, 4 weeks ago, something like that, we mounted these Tolumnias on these little terracotta saucers, and they seem to be doing okay. I do see green root tips. They do seem to be growing okay. The issue that I'm finding is that they're staying dry too long. So I had originally said that I may need to add some sphagnum moss to these, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to add a little bit of sphagnum moss. I'm going to have to add some more securing structure string to these to kind of hold it in place. But so far so good. They're all still green. Their roots do seem to be growing. None of them have turned brown, none of them have turned yellow. They seem to be getting enough light up on the wall. And as I said, this one, the flowers are open, and I'll get a close-up view of these in just a minute. They're not quite exactly what I expected. This particular dendrobium is a miniature antelope dendrobium. So it's the flowers, I think the sepals or petals, I can't remember each one. They're supposed to have two long ones that stick straight out at the top of each flower. But these really aren't sticking up. They're kind of like laying forwards, which, you know what, whatever, it's okay. It's got a little bit of delicate purple in the center of each flower, really pretty. And again, this is one that we mounted on one of these little saucers, and this is one that I actually did add moss to. It still hasn't quite grown onto the terracotta yet. It's going to take time. I think that eventually it will, and it'll do quite well. But as for now, I stuck them on the wall, and I don't touch them. Every morning and every night, every morning before I go to work, I spray them down with some reverse osmosis water with just the slightest hint of fertilizer in it. I do that every morning and every evening when I come home. It's enough to maintain them, but I don't think it's enough for them to thrive. So that is why we're going to put moss on them. So let's get set up for that, and I'll bring you in closer so that you can get a better look at what we're doing, and we'll get started. Okie dokie. So this is going to be a little bit different. I tried to bring you in close enough to where you can kind of see what we're doing up close, because this is about the orchids, it's not about me, so you probably don't want to like stare at me. But let me take a sip of tea here. I just harvested some ginger out of the garden and made some ginger tea, and I have to say it's pretty dadgum good. So okay, let's start with the smaller one here. This one is Tolumnia Golden Sunset Brownie. You can see I've got some green root tips coming up, and this one's doing okay. Like I said, they're all doing all right. I think they need to stay wet a little bit longer than they are. So in that being the case, we're gonna add some small amounts of sphagnum moss. I don't want to overdo it, but then at the same time, you know, I want it to have enough to keep it moist a little bit longer than it's staying. So we're going to I'm going to work my way around the edge. See, can you kind of see that? And then I'm not going to put any behind it, because eventually I may have to replace this moss, because sphagnum moss can break down and turn acidic, as most organic material can break down and turn acidic. So I want it to be sitting on top and around the sides, so that if that ever happens, I don't really have to take the plant off the mount in order to do that. I can just remove what little bit of moss there is around the sides and from the top to do that. At least that's the plan anyway. We'll see how that works. And again, this is that dirty sphagnum moss, so it's got chunks of grass and stuff in it. Again, so far I've used it, and it doesn't seem to be causing an issue with any place that I've used it, and it's got some nice long strands to it, so I think it's going to serve its purpose quite well. Okay, see, I don't want to completely smother it in moss, but I do want a nice little smattering to help maintain moisture around the roots, to hopefully allow the roots to start growing onto the actual mount, which is the whole goal here, is to get it to grow onto that mount so that I can get rid of the string eventually. So I'm gonna, there we go. Yeah, I'm really happy with how these have turned out so far. Like I said, they're doing quite well. I can't, other than them potentially staying dry too long, they're doing quite well. You know, like I said to begin with, I just cannot wait for these to bloom, because the flowers are actually, for the size of the plant, the flowers are quite large. I mean, they're kind of insane how big the flowers are in consideration of how big the or small the plants are, really. You know, I've been doing a little bit more research on miniature orchids, and there are some that are just microscopic, you know, and you know, if you're into that sort of thing, like microscopically small plants, I guess I kind of get it. But see, the whole thing for me is the flowers of an orchid. If an orchid is so small that the flowers you have to have a magnifying glass to see the flowers, I don't quite understand the point. Unless you have it in a displayed in like a nicely planted terrarium or something, then I could kind of see it, you know, working out okay. But for me, I don't see the appeal of having microscopic flowers on a plant. I was really hoping to find some scissors, but I could not find my scissors, so we will just tape up the extra then. So what I'm going to do is put each one of these back in their spot whenever I get done, and I'll give you a view of what their little area looks like, because I have actually, you know, I might put just a tiny amount, a couple little right behind it, just in there behind it. Just a little bit, just a couple small pieces, not much. I know I just said I didn't want to put any behind it, but at least this I can actually reach in there and get it out of there if I have to. And the room that they're in has excellent airflow. There's a ceiling fan that's on 24/7. It's on a medium setting. It's not like a hurricane or anything, but so there's that one. I was telling you that I would show you the spot they're in because I've got labels on the wall underneath each one, so that you can clearly see see what each one is, if I can get it out. But I also have these tags on the back to so that I don't forget what they are when I take them down. You know, I think that was smart. Okay, so there's that one. I kind of like the look of the moss, if I'm honest with you. I think it looks kind of neat. But on to the next one. Alright, so this one is the Red Devil, and I kind of want to move it up. And you can kind of see how these smaller leaves, they look a little bit dehydrated. It's because they are dehydrated. It's not getting enough moisture. So the smaller one that we did, the first one, it's small enough that it's not that big a deal. It can actually maintain its moisture better than these larger ones can. At least that's the logic I'm operating on, because it's doing better than it seems to be doing better as far as its moisture goes than these bigger ones are. But I have to be careful because I don't want to cover up the stalk of the stem, because I don't want to invoke any crown rot in the plant. So I have to be careful and keep that in mind as I'm putting this moss on. But at the same time, I've got to get enough of this moss on here to increase the humidity around the roots, so that it can hold on to moisture for a longer period of time than it currently is, because I don't feel like it's maintaining enough moisture, which is why we're doing this. So these things are just, I want to get more of these. I've already decided that eventually I'm going to invest in more in these. As soon as I find the best culture for my growing conditions. That's the thing about growing orchids is yeah, the books say one thing, you Google it, somebody's page says another thing, well, this text says that, this text says that, but at the end of the day, you as a grower have to figure out what works in your environment, because not all of our environments are the same. Some people's ambient humidity in their homes is higher than others. My ambient humidity in my house, it sits in between 40 and 50%. Around the orchids in their grow space in the living room, it'll get up to 60-70% after I water them, but it doesn't stay there for very long. So that's why I use mainly sphagnum moss to plant everything in, because it retains its moisture very well. I've got my Phalaenopsis growing in sphagnum moss. Some people would say you shouldn't do that because they have big, thick, fleshy roots and they need to dry out and this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, they do need to dry out. And when you're using sphagnum moss, that's the trick. Look at that. I cut that piece too short. Damn. But when you're using sphagnum moss, that's the trick, depending on what you're growing. Now, I've got some, the Tolumnia that we did a video on, growing in pure sphagnum moss, and those I don't let dry out. I let them get towards dry, but the minute they start getting, the moss starts getting a little crispy on top, I immediately drench it in reverse osmosis water, and I put it back on the shelf. And so far, somebody left a comment asking how those plants were doing. It hasn't quite been long enough for me to feel comfortable giving you an update on those just yet, but as a tentative update, those particular plants seem to be doing quite well. You know, I was kind of leery going into it because everything I've heard about Phalaenopsis is that they're incredibly difficult plants, finicky plants to grow. So far, knock on wood, the ones that I have don't seem to be that difficult. But then again, as I said, I haven't had them that long, so it's really not, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving you an update just yet on those. So I'm going to wait probably another couple weeks before I give an update, but like where I actually show them to you. But I can say that they are growing. They are developing nice roots. They seem to be enjoying the light. It's the same light I have my Phalaenopsis under. They seem to be doing quite well in that environment. They don't seem to have too much of a problem with it. So far so good with those. But the trick is, with most orchids, you want to let them dry out, at least for a day or two, if not longer than that, whenever you before you water them again, because sphagnum moss does hold a lot of water, but it's also quite airy if you don't pack it. So that's the trick here, is I'm putting it on here, but I'm not packing it down. So there's that one. It's quite a large specimen, and it's actually got roots growing out that way. And I don't know where the growing tip is. I had assumed that these smaller plants, where it was new growth, but it may not be. I'm hoping that eventually what the plant will do, if it's so inclined to do so, is if it starts growing from the back, it can actually have enough wiggle room to actually start pushing itself forwards and forming kind of a mound towards the front. That might happen, that might not. Like I said, only time will tell. It's one of the things that I enjoy the most about orchids. It's not just their flowers. It's watching them grow and actually watching them develop. And I could say that about anything that I grow. I do enjoy watching things grow and develop and get bigger and do well. So there's that one. I know I said I was going to put these back one at a time, but I don't feel like getting up that many times, so I'm not doing that. I was going to stack them all up over there. Now this one is another large specimen. This is Jarek Red Spread. And I got nice green growing tips on the roots. It is growing. It is trying. But again, I think increasing its amount of moisture around its roots is going to do it a world of good, and that they should, because that's one of the things that I read and that I've heard through other YouTube channels and things that I've read, is that these particular plants, if they lose their root system, they can go downhill pretty quickly. So that's why I've decided to do this and not wait any longer, because currently I do have nice root growth coming on, new roots. Some of the old roots are actually branching a little bit, which is interesting. I didn't know that they would do that, but apparently these do have branching root systems. So I figured if I go ahead and do this, I might be able to save the new roots that are coming on, and also the new roots will be able to acclimate themselves to having the moss there. Whereas before, you remember when I got them, they were in those little cups, like little Vanda baskets almost, and you know, a root system on an orchid kind of acclimates itself to its particular environment it finds itself in. So if you have a plant whose roots are growing aerially, which means just out in the air, out in the open, they don't tend to react very well if they're then covered up. To be honest, in my experience, I really haven't noticed too much of an issue with that. But then again, I don't have a whole lot of experience with taking something that's mounted and putting it in a pot. So far, my experience has been the opposite. I do have some Vandas, however you want to pronounce it, that were growing just in the open, just in baskets. But I realized that they were not getting enough moisture, so I put those in some big baskets with wood chips. Bark, not wood chips, but bark, and I hung them outside because it's the right time of the year. That'll be another video, probably the next one after this one, where I show you all my grow spaces, the interior ones and the exterior ones. I won't show you any of the flower beds or anything like that. I'll save that for the gardening playlist. But oh, and that's the other thing. I've got several different playlists on my channel because I just can't bring myself to make more than one channel. I just can't do it. That's a lot of work, having more than one channel, and I don't know if it's absolutely necessary. I mean, if you come to my channel for orchids, there's other stuff that may or may not interest you. If you find it interesting, then please, by all means, check it out, and let me know what you think. If not, I get it. You just move along and do you, whatever, But I feel like having it all on one channel might be better than having several. I just realized I'm doing this up here where you can't see. Putting all my videos on one channel and having playlists is probably going to be it's more economic for me than having several different YouTube channels for different subjects. But as a result, it means as my videos come out, you never know what video is going to be, the next video is going to be about. I don't know, I kind of like that. I mean, I'm sure some people find that annoying, but so far, I kind of like it. Alright, so there's that one. And that, again, was the Jarek Red Spread. Nice little nest of moss. And then our last one that we've got is Jarek Flyer Sahara. This one's kind of like an orange, burnt orange color. It's really pretty. And again with this one, I want to move it up towards the center and put all the moss around the bottom there. I'm fairly confident that these they're not going to stay wet for a long period of time. They will dry out. They will dry out in a fair amount of time. I say fairly quickly, but whereas without the moss, they dry immediately. I spray them, they stay wet for maybe a couple seconds. The saucer absorbs a lot of water, but it also diffuses it, and it evaporates it very quickly. So currently, as I said, early in the morning when I water them before I go to work, they stay wet a few minutes, maybe a minute, and then they dry out. And then they go all day long without water again until I get home from work, and then I spray them again. And I just feel like that's too much time in between waterings for these to go. We will remedy that with some moss. I mean, it's not the prettiest moss. I'll say that again, but you know, if I had really cared about that, I would have went to the store and actually bought a brick of the nice New Zealand moss that's nice and orangey yellow, or white, or whatever color, whatever you want to call that, beige. And I would have used that. But you know, this is more natural looking, I think. I love the look of like live moss. You know, people who do mounted orchids and they have live moss growing on them. I think that looks pretty good. But again, my house is too dry, and I'm just not. I'm not into having a grow tent in my house. Because outside is a high humidity environment. So when summer comes, spring and summer, anything that's like large goes outside, and all the small stuff like this, and well, most of my other orchids, like all of my Oncidium Alliance orchids go outside. My Vanda orchids go outside. I've got some Cymbidiums, they go outside. My Phalaenopsis, my Zygopetalums go outside as well. They just absolutely love the heat. Zygopetalums. That's another orchid that I've kind of heard people say is kind of they've had difficulties with. And again, knock on wood. So far, I've got two different Zygopetalums. I've got a or maybe Zygonosia. I believe it's Zygopetalum Jumping Jack, and then there's a Zygopetalum Bluebird. The Bluebird is a huge plant. It's just. I'll show it to you when I go outside and show you the grow space outside. But anyway, the Zygopetalum Jumping Jack, that's actually the thumbnail or profile pic for my channel. It's also the background on my phone. It's absolutely gorgeous flower. I was over the moon when it bloomed. I just couldn't believe the beauty of the flower. That plant's doing quite well. It's just put out a new growth. It may bloom again this year. It may not. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so we've got these. I'm going to get set up again. I'm going to put it back on the wall, and I'll give you a view of what they look like on the wall. And here they are, up on the wall, in their home. I like them better with the moss. I think they look better. I don't like it as much as I will when I'll be able to take the string off, but so far I like the way it looks. What do you think of the tags on the wall? You think it looks pretty cool? I think it looks pretty cool. I haven't made one for the dendrobium yet, but yeah. So that's them. It's gonna take them a while to do anything really, because as I've stated before, orchids are slow growing. Some of them faster than others, but for the most part, they're slow growing. So they take time. I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective. That's way up there on the wall, and this is about eye level for me. So you look around. It's about eye level. So I do have to look up, but and as you can see, I've got a ceiling fan running. So they're going to dry out decently well. They're not going to stay wet too long. And I think with the extra moss, or the moss on there, they will stay wet long enough and they will thrive a little bit. They'll actually thrive. But, so you'll just have to look forward to the next video where I do another update on these. Not sure when that'll be, when I have something to report, I guess. And until then, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.